Tamara, a loyal resident, was denied access to her community pool by the guards, despite paying her dues and following all the rules. The guards, flaunting their authority, shamelessly used the pool for their own benefit while mocking the residents' rights. But Tamara's unwavering persistence, coupled with unexpected support from local firefighters, sparked a fire that no one saw coming. But just wait until you hear how this shocking turn of events led to a victory that none of them could have predicted. Tamara had been dreaming about this moment all week. The heat was unbearable, and after a long stretch of tiring work and household chores, she finally had a free afternoon. The community pool was her escape, a place to unwind, let go, and enjoy the cool water. She walked up to the gates of the pool with a relaxed smile, already imagining herself diving in. But as she reached the entrance, the guard at the gate looked at her like she didn't belong. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice cool and dismissive. Tamara, not thinking anything of it, said, "Yes, just here to swim." But the guard didn't budge. He glanced down at a clipboard, tapping his pen as he scanned the list of residents. "You're not on the list," he said flatly. Tamara's smile faded. "What do you mean? I live here and I pay my dues. I'm a resident." "We don't know you," he responded almost coldly. He barely looked up, clearly more focused on the clipboard in his hand than the woman standing before him. Her heart sank. How could this be happening? This was supposed to be her afternoon of peace. But now, here she was, standing in front of a gate to the one place in the neighborhood that was meant for relaxation. And it was being denied to her. Tamara's mind raced, trying to figure out what was going on. She had used the pool countless times before. The pool itself shimmered in the sunlight, its water inviting. It looked perfect, like something out of a vacation ad, yet it was suddenly out of reach. "You're denying me access just like that?" she asked, a hint of disbelief creeping into her voice. The guard barely acknowledged her question, instead nodding toward a group of people casually lounging in the pool, people she didn't recognize, not residents, but still there, enjoying the cool water without a care. It was a sharp contrast to her own situation. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a public humiliation. She had done nothing wrong, but here she was, excluded and ignored. Tamara took a deep breath, trying to keep her emotions in check. She wanted to fight, to argue, but something in her gut told her that pushing back right now wouldn't get her anywhere. Instead, she turned around and walked away, her legs feeling heavier with each step. The sound of the pool's water, so inviting just moments ago, now felt like a mocking reminder of her exclusion. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And she was determined to find out exactly why she, of all people, had been turned away. Tamara's heart pounded as she stormed to the management office, her anger burning like a wildfire inside her. This wasn't just a small inconvenience anymore. It was a blatant act of disrespect. She had paid her dues, followed the rules, and abided by every guideline in the book. Yet here she was, standing outside the gates of a community she helped maintain, being told she wasn't welcome in the very space meant for residents like her. Her fists clenched, and her mind raced with questions. Who had made this decision? And why was she being singled out? She had been part of this neighborhood for years, long enough to know when something was wrong. When Tamara entered the management office, She was met with indifference. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with a tired expression, glanced up from her desk without any urgency. "How can I help you?" "I was just at the pool, and I was turned away," Tamara said, trying to keep her voice steady, despite the growing fire inside. "I pay my dues like everyone else. Why was I denied access?" The receptionist barely looked up. "You need to speak to the guards," she said, offering no other explanation. Her response hit Tamara like a slap in the face. The woman's dismissive tone, her refusal to engage in the situation, it all felt like an attempt to brush her off, to make her disappear. No apologies, no solutions, just a cold suggestion to deal with the same guards who had humiliated her moments before. Tamara's hands trembled with frustration as she turned and left the office, her mind boiling with anger. How dare they treat her like this? As she walked back toward the pool, she could see the guards in the distance, laughing and joking with each other as if nothing had happened. The same guards who had refused her entry now casually splashed water around, grinning as they ran through mock drills. They were clearly using the pool for their training exercises, with no regard for the residents who were denied their right to use it. Tamara's anger boiled over. It was one thing to be turned away. It was another to see these people flaunting their control, making a mockery of the whole situation. They were clearly enjoying the power they held over the residents. A petty, power-hungry move that felt almost personal. She watched them, her heart burning with resentment. They hadn't just denied her access to the pool. They had made a joke of her, of the entire community. Every laugh they shared, every splash they made, felt like a slap to her face. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She wasn't going to let this slide. She wouldn't let them get away with treating her, or anyone else, like this. No one was going to make her feel small. She had a right to be there, and she would make sure the world knew it. Her thoughts were no longer just about the pool. It was about respect, fairness, and the way people like those guards, who hid behind their little bit of power, could trample on others without a second thought. Tamara's anger was no longer just about a pool. It was about justice. And it was a fire that wouldn't burn out until she had made sure that those who wronged her felt the weight of their actions. Tamara's frustration had reached a boiling point. This wasn't just about the pool anymore. It was about her dignity, about fairness, about standing up to the people who thought they could get away with mistreating others simply because they had a little bit of power. She wasn't going to sit back and let it slide. No, this time she would make sure her voice was heard. The moment she got home, Tamara grabbed her phone and began typing furiously. The words flowed from her like a torrent, her anger fueling every sentence. She described what had happened, how she had been turned away, humiliated, while others, including the guards, freely used the pool. She made sure to emphasize how unfair and unjust the situation was, how it was an attack not just on her, but on the entire community that she was a part of. She hit post. The response was almost immediate. Her social media feed exploded with comments, shares, and messages from fellow residents, each of them expressing their shock and outrage at what had happened. People were furious. How could this be happening in their own neighborhood? Why weren't their voices being heard? How had things gotten so out of hand? Tamara felt the tide turning. The community was no longer silent, no longer passive. It wasn't just her anymore. It was everyone. The injustice was clear, and together they were going to make sure it was addressed. But it wasn't just the residents who took notice. A few hours later, she received a message from one of the local firefighters. They had been using the pool for training that week, and Tamara had seen them earlier, working alongside the guards. The firefighter expressed his sympathies and frustration at the situation, stating that they had been surprised by the guards' behavior. He told her that many of them didn't feel comfortable training there, knowing how the residents had been treated. For the first time since everything had started, Tamara felt a spark of hope. The firefighters understood. They had seen firsthand what was going on, but more than that, they believed in her cause. They stood with her, not just as firefighters, but as individuals who knew the importance of fairness and equality. The firefighter offered to support her publicly, stating that they would no longer use the pool for training unless the issue was resolved. This was the turning point she needed. Their support wasn't just a moral victory. It was a statement. It was a sign that she wasn't alone. If the local firefighters, people who had the respect and trust of the community, were willing to step up and speak out, then this injustice had to be addressed. The community rallied behind her. There was talk of a formal petition, even a protest at the next HOA meeting. But more than that, people were angry. Real, deep, passionate anger. Tamara felt a surge of adrenaline as she watched everything unfold. It was no longer just about getting access to the pool. It was about standing up for what was right. It was about proving that one person's voice, fueled by truth and backed by a community, could make a difference. She could feel the momentum building. And as more and more people got involved, her resolve only grew stronger. The more they all stood together, the more impossible it became for those in power to ignore them. Tamara wasn't just fighting for a pool anymore. She was fighting for justice, and she wasn't going to back down. It wasn't an easy fight, but Tamara had won. After weeks of escalating pressure, the management finally cracked. Legal action had been taken, public outcry had spread, and the community's voices could no longer be ignored. The pool, which had once been denied to so many, was now open to everyone again. The email from the management office arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Its subject line stark and formal: "Apology and reopening of community pool." Tamara couldn't help but let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It wasn't just the access to the pool that had been restored. It was a statement. The apology was a public acknowledgement of the injustice, a forced recognition that the community had been wronged. Dear residents, we regret the inconvenience caused by the recent restrictions on pool access. After reviewing the situation thoroughly and considering the concerns raised by the community, we have decided to reopen the pool to all residents immediately. We apologize for the misunderstanding and assure you that such incidents will not occur again in the future. Thank you for your patience. Sincerely, HOA Management. It wasn't just words, it was victory. The satisfaction wasn't just in the act of reclaiming what was hers, what was theirs. It was the culmination of the long, difficult battle against a system that had once felt untouchable. Tamara had taken a stand, not just for herself, but for everyone who had been pushed aside, ignored, or silenced. And now, everyone could swim again. But what mattered more to her than the pool itself was the message that had been sent. This wasn't just about swimming. It was about standing up to abuse of power, challenging authority, and proving that persistence could break even the most stubborn walls. The feeling of justice being restored wasn't just a personal triumph for Tamara. It was a victory for the whole community. She watched as people began to use the pool again, a renewed sense of unity and pride filling the air. The residents walked with their heads held high, their voices no longer silenced by the indifferent, cold rules that had once been imposed upon them. Tamara's actions had ignited something deeper, something that would remain long after the issue was resolved. And the most satisfying part? The guards, who had once acted like they were above the rules, now had to face the consequences of their actions. The power they had so casually abused had been stripped away, and the community had shown them that no one was above reproach. Tamara leaned back in her chair, watching the people around her. They were enjoying the pool, yes, but they were also enjoying the freedom that came with knowing their voices mattered, knowing that standing together, united, could make a real difference. This was what it meant to have power in numbers. This was what it meant to fight for what was right. Her fight had ended, but the message lived on. The community had reclaimed not just the pool, but their right to be heard, to be treated with respect. In the end, it wasn't just about access to a pool. It was about justice. Tamara had fought for that justice. And in the end, the power of persistence had won.